written to him by her. Again, there are two objects. That is, subject is coming to an object, and here the second object is written as it is. You can change from passive to active even if there is no object. Okay, but you can't change from active to passive if there is no object. If you want to put object 2 first in the subject, you can put it. If you want to put object 1 as the subject, you can put it. Hello everyone, I am Dr. Shalini, Professor of English, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence, Mysuru. I welcome you all to the language component session about active and passive voice prescribed for 3rd SEM B.B.A. So we are going to understand, we are just going to have a quick glance of whatever rules we learned in the previous session for changing from active to passive voice. So then we will also learn about the rules to be followed when transitive with a transitive verb having two objects. Okay, so then we'll also deal with the prepositional verb. Okay, when the transitive verb is a prepositional verb. Then we'll also have a look at those verbs that are auxiliary. Okay, how to change sentences that have auxiliary verbs from active to passive voice. Then we'll also learn about how to change from passive to active. So all these sessions, it was active to passive. At last, we'll have 1 or 2 slides about passive to active changing. Okay, so let's begin our session. We'll have a quick glance of the rules that we learned for changing from active to passive voice. So here you can see that I have just listed all the rules that we learned in the previous session. The most important rule was the subject that is there in the active voice becomes the passive and it is placed in the object part. The subject becomes the object of the sentence. So that was the most important rule that we had to follow. Again, when there is the subject goes to the object, obviously the object has to go to the subject part. So you have to interchange the subject and object of the sentences. Okay. So then what is it? Suppose there is an auxiliary verb. In case there is an auxiliary verb, necessary changes will be made. And the modified thing is copied down. Okay. For example, if at all we say is, am, are and all, whatever changes had to be made, that is changed to was. Okay. Then if at all there is no auxiliary verb, that is Ram killed Ravan, there is no auxiliary verb, we have to add an auxiliary verb there. Ravan was killed. Okay. So that auxiliary verb is added and then the sentence is written. Fine. That was all about it. Then we also learnt about few rules in the tenses. Okay, we also learned few rules in the tenses, like where be has to be used. Okay, be, been, being, all these were used. Okay, so about that also we have learnt. And whenever we have to request an instruction, like whenever we are changing an imperative sentence to passive form. Okay, whenever we are changing from imperative to passive form, then here I order you, I request you, all these have to be used. Okay. So then the main sentence actually remains unchanged. Okay. So the main sentence actually remains unchanged, but only these words like request, order, instruct, all these will be retained as it is. Okay. So now let us start with those verbs that have two objects. Okay. So here you can see in these example sentences, these are transitive verbs that have two objects. Okay. So these are transitive verbs that have two objects, like teacher is the subject here. Teacher is the subject of the sentence and you have this verb here. This is the verb. This is the first object and this is the second object. This is the second object. So I'm just giving you an example of how to change it from active to passive. So now this you already know that you have one or two objects. So how do you change it? You can put any one of those objects in the beginning, that is in the subject. Okay, it is left to you whether you want to give importance to the cake or you want to give importance to the students. Whichever you want, you can put it in the beginning. Okay, so here first I have taken object 2 in the subject part. Okay, so cake I'll be putting in the subject part, that is the object 2 will be here, and we have learned this rule, was given. This you already know, it is participle form. isn't it? We already learnt in the previous session that whenever you have this past forms, you just use it like that. Whenever you have this participle forms for few verbs. So those have to be used as it is. Okay. So given exists. This word exists for give, gave and given. Okay. So for that I have just used given here, and was, you already know, according to the rule the auxiliary verb has to be added. Fine. So then to students. So students will be retained as it is. Then again, as per the rule, by the teacher. The is optional since it is not there in the subject. If you want, you can put it. If you don't want, you can leave it. Okay. Even if you put, that is not a mistake. Okay. It is left to you. Okay. Even if you don't put it, that's fine. But if it is there, if at all it is there, you have to put it. If it is not there, even if you put it, that is not a mistake. Okay. So now I have changed the object 1. Here I have taken object 1 as the subject. This becomes the subject now. Since this is plural, I don't use was, I use were. Cake is singular, so I have used was. Here students word is plural, so I have used were. Okay. Then given a cake, so this object remains as it is. Okay. Then by the teacher, again the subject will remain as it is. Okay. So this is the way you change it from active to passive whenever you have two objects. Okay. So let's go further now. We'll see a few more examples. Okay. More the examples, the concept is clearer. Okay. So here, let us begin with this example now. I told her a story. I is the subject. We have two objects here. Okay. Her is one, a story is one. This is the first object. This is the second object. Okay. So how do you change it? She was told a story by me. I have changed it only one type. So she, here object 1, I have taken it as subject. Okay. So this is one type. Then was told as it is according to the rule. A story is retained as it is, and by me goes to from subject to the object. Okay. Apart from this, you could have told it like this. A story was told by me to her. This is another way of changing it. Okay. So the story, which is the second object, that has come to the subject. Okay. So this is another way of changing it. Again, another example, let us see. So she is the subject here. Book is object 1. To me is object 2. Okay. A book was given to me by her. That is one part. This is object 1 that becomes the subject. Or you can also write I was given a book by her. So this is another way of changing it. Okay. So one more example. She wrote a letter. Subject. A letter is one object. This is another object. Okay. Similarly, a letter, I have taken object 1 as the subject here. Okay. So written to him by her. Again, there are two objects. That is, subject is coming to an object, and here the second object is retained as it is. This can also be written as, I have to take this object 2 as the subject. So what do? It is, he was written a letter by her. Okay. So this is another way in which you write the sentence. Okay. So whenever you have two objects, it is left to you. Your liberty, you can take liberty and change it accordingly. If you want to put object 2 first in the subject, you can put it. If you want to put object 1 as the subject, you can put it. Okay. So this is one of the ways in which you can change it. Okay. So now we'll move on to prepositional verbs. Prepositional verbs are those verbs that will have prepositions along with the verbs. Okay. So here you can see laughed is a verb. Okay. Laughed is a verb there, and along with that there is another preposition. Simple. Okay. So there is another preposition. So how do you change it? Okay. You should not separate the preposition and the verb. In such cases, you are not supposed to separate this preposition and verb. This whole thing has to be treated as one single entity only. Okay. It has to be treated as one single entity whenever you are changing from active to passive. Okay. So how do you change it? Okay. This will change to the subject, this will change to the object. Sadly, here subject and object both are similar. So you may not be able to make much of a difference here. But here just concentrate on this. Laughed at is retained as it is. Laughed at is retained as it is. Only addition is was. As per the rule, was is added. Okay. Again, let us look at another example. They broke into. So here this is the subject. This is the prepositional verb. This is the prepositional verb because into is the preposition here. Okay, into, on, above, over, all these are called as prepositions, isn't it? So prepositions show us they tell us about the relationship of the subject to the other words of the sentence, that is called as a preposition. They basically tell us about the position of the nouns or pronouns in the sentence. Okay, so here into is the preposition, broke into altogether is the prepositional verb there. Okay, so here again broke into should be retained as a single entity. Okay, so here the pet shop, this is the subject now and this becomes the object now. Okay, so the pet shop becomes the subject, was is the addition here, was broken into by them. This is actually very easy to change the sentences from active to passive which contain prepositional verbs because you need not have to make much of changes over here. Okay, you need not have to concentrate on the verb which is there. Okay, you need not have to follow all the tense rules and all. So not much of a headache. So this is actually very easy. Whenever you have this prepositional verbs, it is actually very easy for you to change the sentences from active to passive. Okay, so now let us go for this auxiliary verbs. This is actually very important. Okay, this is actually very important. You have few words like be over here. Okay, be and the past participle forms. Okay, so they have to be added whenever you are using this auxiliary verbs. Okay, so let me just tell you what are modal auxiliary verbs here. Modal auxiliary verbs, I'm using it here newly. Okay, modal verbs, those words like shall, may, could, can. Okay, words like this, they all are called as modal auxiliaries. Okay, modal auxiliaries, and you also have to keep it in mind that whenever you are using this modal auxiliaries, you have to use another verb with it. Okay, always whenever you use modal auxiliaries, there will always be another verb with it. You cannot use it alone. Okay, so let me just give you an example. I may tomorrow. If I say this, can you get a meaning? Are you able to get a meaning? There should have been a full stop. I may tomorrow. There is no meaning. Suppose I add another verb to it. I may go tomorrow. Okay, so then you get a meaning. So always modal auxiliaries should have another verb with it. Okay, so now coming to this. So we should obey. Should is the modal auxiliary here. Okay, should is the modal auxiliary here. Here you must take care whenever you are changing it to passive voice. We is the subject. The easiest way to change from active to passive is first you have to identify the subject. Okay, then you have to identify the object. Then interchange. Simple. So traffic rules will go here. Okay, so should is retained as it is. Should is retained as it is. After that I said be and participle have to be added. How is that? Just add be, then participle form. Okay, then we, it changes to us, addition is by. Okay, object to subject, subject to object, retain modal as it is, just add be and participle form. That's it. Very simple. Let us see another example. You must read this book. This is compulsion. Okay, so here must is the auxiliary verb here, that is modal auxiliary. This is the modal auxiliary here. This is the verb in the sentence. So that has to be changed. This book, this is the object which has been changed to the subject. Whereas you is the, again it is changed to the object. Fine. Here must retained as it is. Then be, as I said, as per the rule you are adding it. Then read. Read and read spelling is same, but you pronounce it differently. That's it. Okay. So whenever you have this modal auxiliaries, you have to retain the modal auxiliary as it is. Just add be after that. Be, no forms, no been, being, nothing. Only be has to be added. And after that, you add a verb. That's it. Simple. Okay. So how do you change from passive to active? That is another important thing you have to understand. Okay, so here when you change from passive to active, that is as simple as that. Whatever rules you have followed to change from active to passive. So whatever rules you have followed to change from active to passive, all those you just have to reverse it. Okay, you need not have to go through so many things. Okay, first thing, identify the subject, identify the object, interchange it. Okay, so now let us just see here. English is taught to us by Mr. Peter Daniel. This is in passive voice. So you just have to identify the subject, which will become the object. Okay, then is taught, that is the verb here. Okay, then to us by Peter, Mr. Peter Daniel. Okay, so here very simple, this is an object and this also is an object. Okay, so whenever this comes, usually the proper noun you keep it as the subject. Usually the proper noun you keep it as the subject. Now here you can see Mr. Peter Daniel, that is the proper noun. Okay, that comes to the subject, and is taught, it is in simple present. That has to be in simple present because it is. Okay, any confusion? Just go back to the previous session and watch the rules. So you will get to know how to change from active to passive, simple present. Here also this is in simple present. Teaches, which happens every day. Okay, simple present is used to talk about those verbs that happen every day, as I said. So teaches, he teaches every day. So I have used teaches over here as English. Okay, so this is the object. Us is the object. Again, English, it's left to you. Whichever you want, you can put it in the object part, as I said. But here there's a compulsion that proper noun will usually be placed in the subject part. Okay, so in that way you change from passive to active voice. Okay, so one more example, let us just check over here. The meeting, which is the subject, was presided, past tense, okay, over by the chairman. Okay, so here chairman only is conducting the meeting. After by, whatever is there, that will go to the subject. This will go to the subject, that is the chairman. That will go to the subject. Then since it is past tense, I have retained simple past. Whenever you are changing from simple past to passive voice, simple past active to simple past passive, then you add was. Whenever you are changing from passive to active, you remove was. Okay, you remove was and then just retain the word as it is. Okay, presided over the meeting as it is, you can over retained as it is, then subject will come to the object part. Okay, so this is how you change from passive to active form. Okay, so this is how you change from passive to active form. Very easy. Whenever you want to change from passive to active, just go back to the rules, study all the rules, what you have learned from for changing from active to passive. The same thing you just have to reverse it. Okay, whatever you are adding while changing from active to passive, you will remove it while changing from passive to active. Here you can see, for example, you just added is whenever changing from active to passive. But here changing from passive to active, you are removing that is, that is auxiliary verb. Similarly, in the next sentence also, this is past tense and you are adding it when you are changing from active to passive, and here you are just removing that. Was is not there. Okay, so these things you have to keep it in mind. Then how do you identify if the sentence is in active or passive? You just have to look for it if there is the word called by. If it is not there, then it is said to be in active voice. If it is there, then it is said to be in passive voice. This is 90% true. But there are few imperative sentences which do not go for that rule. Okay, so whenever you have imperative sentences, you should be very careful. Like for example, there are few sentences wherein you need not have to mention the subject at all. Okay, so such sentences you should be little careful. For example, let me just tell you wherein there is no subject at all, when you change from imperative sentences, or there is no need of a subject. Okay, suppose in passive voice, if I say the thieves were arrested. The thieves were arrested. Okay, if I say this, then it is obvious that police is going to arrest the thief. Okay, police are only going to arrest the thief. So this is the subject, this is the verb. There is no object at all. So how do you change it to active voice? You can change from passive to active even if there is no object. Okay, but you can't change from active to passive if there is no object. Okay, so now this is said to be in passive voice. This is said to be in passive voice. So thieves were arrested by whom? By whom? Obviously, police only have to arrest. Okay, I cannot go and arrest a thief. So police is actually understood. Okay, so police is actually understood. So here, when you change it to active voice, you can just write it like that: police arrested the thief. Okay, so police arrested the thieves. Okay, similarly, when you come to the part of judgment, okay, judgment was announced or judgment was given. Who will give the judgment? It has to be a judge only who has to give. So even if there is no object in the passive voice, you can assume the subject and then change it to passive voice. We will have few examples and practice sessions when you come back to class. So as of now, just go through all the rules and try changing from active to passive voice and passive to active. So what are the things we learned today? We learned about the rules that have to be followed with transitive verbs having two objects. How to change from active to passive, those sentences wherein there are two objects. Okay, so then we also learnt about those sentences which had prepositional verbs. Okay, laughed at, broken into, all these we have learnt. So prepositional verb has to be treated as one single entity. Okay, so then we also dealt with auxiliary verbs. Okay, is, was, were, all these, and also modal auxiliaries also we learned. Auxiliary verb and modal auxiliary, both we have learned. Modal auxiliaries are nothing but should, shall, will, all these are called as modal auxiliaries. Okay, so with that, what we have to do, that also we have understood. Finally, we also learned from changing from passive to active voice. We also learned changing of sentences from passive to active voice, just the reverse of changing from active to passive. Fine, that's all for today. So I just want you to go back to the recorded session and watch it again. So let us meet again in our next session about adverbs. Okay, so good luck to you all. Go through the recorded session. Okay, any doubts, you're welcome to ask in the class. Okay, so see you soon, children. Take care, study well. Bye bye. Take care. Bye bye.